Hello everyone, my name is Lisa and I live in Switzerland. Today I'm shooting a video based on numerous requests from you about renting an apartment in Switzerland. I'll tell you in more detail about the process of searching for housing, whether it's realistic to find it on your own or if you need to turn to realtors, what documents you need to prepare, and generally, what steps you need to take to get that coveted apartment. If you're interested in this topic, be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already and keep watching this video. Well, first of all, where to look? Of course, on the internet. There are various websites for housing search. For example, you could use the one called Comparis. I'll leave the link in the description for your convenience. It might be helpful. In addition to Comparis, there are many other websites that also provide listing of apartments available for rent at the moment. I'll mention a few. They are all more or less the same, some are bigger, some are smaller. The websites I personally used are HomeGate, Imescount, New Home, and Comparis, as I mentioned already. Also, if you are moving to study in Switzerland, for example, maybe you want to study at ETH Zurich, then some universities have their own websites specifically for student accommodations. Once you've selected the apartment you like, you need to contact the advertiser. On each website, there is usually a form where you can leave your contact details and they will get in touch with you. Sometimes the description of the apartment includes already the show in shadow, so then you can come and view it directly. Often, someone still lives in the apartment, so you need to arrange the viewing directly with them. Keep in mind that it's not always a company that owns the apartment showing it. It could just be an individual renting it out at the moment. It's quite common to view apartments with furniture, and it can sometimes be challenging to imagine the space when it's cluttered. In my experience, it's much nicer to see a clean, unfurnished apartment. However, this is subjective. Regarding whether you need a realtor or not, it depends on your preference. I personally have never used one. I'll tell you a bit more about my experience. The first time I searched for an apartment was when I first arrived in Switzerland as a master student. I found an apartment through a website and signed a contract with an individual who owned 2 apartments. The second time, I rented from a company while the building was still under construction. I applied for the apartment without even seeing it, based only on the floor plan they showed me. The third time I rented through a company again. The previous tenants had lived there for about 7 years, but they had moved out by the time I came to see it. So in conclusion, while you can certainly use a company or a realtor to assist you, it's possible to find an apartment independently. Realtor might save you time and nerves, but it will cost you more money. So it's up to you to decide what works best for you. Also, when viewing apartments, be prepared for the possibility of viewing with others, as sometimes there can be quite a crowd. It can be easy to overlook details when you are surrounded by people. If you like the apartment, you fill out an application form, which is usually given to you during the viewing, and then you send it back to the company or individual for consideration. What do they ask for in this form, you might wonder? Usually it's your personal information, your name, date of birth and contact details. Then you need to indicate your household income and how much money you earn or will earn in the current year. You also need to specify your residency status or citizenship. Additionally, you may need to provide contact information for someone the company renting out the apartment can reach out to for more information about you. Typically, people provide either their supervisor or employee's contact information. If you're a student, you might provide your professor's contact details with whom you collaborate or work. I want to mention that they really do check. They call and ask questions like how tidy you are, how responsible you are in communication, and so on. Then in the application, you need to state the purpose of needing this apartment. Will you live in it yourself, or do you plan to sublet it later? Or perhaps you want to use it as a vacation apartment. not living there permanently but only occasionally. A frequent question on the application is whether you play musical instruments, if you have pets, whether you need a garage, and whether you smoke. Be prepared that you'll likely have to provide this information. You'll also be asked if you have any unpaid debts or unpaid bills in the last 2 years. Moreover, you'll need to attach a statement. If you've been living in Switzerland, it's called Betreibungsauszug. It confirms that you've paid all your bills over the past 2 years and have no outstanding debts. After you filled out all this information, you send the application back to the agency. But keep in mind, there's often a clause stating that if they approve your application for the apartment, but you decide to back out later, you'll have to pay a fine of 150 Swiss francs. Additionally, I recommend attaching a cover letter from your employer or supervisor, although it's not usually required. But many people do it and they think it helps. It's like extra support for your documents to ensure that that apartment goes to you. Also, when you want to rent an apartment in Switzerland, if the apartment is approved for you, then a contract is drawn up. It's pretty standard, but there are a few points I pay attention to. Firstly, for me, it's important to know about the termination notice period. When you can terminate the lease and how much notice you need to give. Typically, it's 3 months and you can't move out on New Year's, so essentially you can't move out end of December or beginning of January. It's also common to move out of an apartment only 3 times a year. The most common months to switch apartments are at the end of March, June and September. In my experience, the minimum rental period for some apartments is indicated. For example, it might say that the apartment is rented out for a minimum of 1 year. Also, the contract can be for a fixed amount of time, so pay attention to this too to avoid unexpected situations. Of course, you can always find someone else to take over your lease, but it's an extra effort for you. You need to find a replacement tenant. Additionally, the company renting out the apartment must also approve them. If they don't like the candidate, you'll have to find someone else or pay the rent yourself. One more thing I always pay attention to is whether grilling is allowed on the balcony and what kind of grill is permitted. In some apartments, charcoal grills are prohibited and only electric or gas grills are allowed. In some cases, grilling on balconies is completely forbidden. Therefore, in Switzerland, it's common to have a clause about grilling on the balcony in the contract. Also, from my experience, I now pay attention to the amount allocated for utilities. As I've already mentioned in one of my previous videos, if the utility cost for a 3-room apartment, for example, is around 200 Swiss francs, it means that once a year you will definitely have to pay about 1,000 francs extra for water per person. 200 Swiss francs might seem like not a small amount, but it's unlikely to cover your water consumption fully, so keep that in mind. The security deposit is also indicated in the contract. Most often it's 3 months rent, but sometimes it's less. Sometimes it's 2 months, and in some cases they ask for a deposit equal to just 1 month's rent. However, more often than not, it's the 3-month standard. So essentially, when you move into an apartment, you'll need to pay for the first month's rent and also provide a deposit for 3 months. This means you'll need to have enough money for 4 months worth of rent upfront. If your application for the apartment is approved and the contract suits you, you sign it. Then you can move in. When you move in, they'll give you a tour of the apartment and you'll compile a protocol. You need to approach this very carefully and meticulously. It's crucial to document any damages, scratches or defects you notice in the apartment. When you move out, the condition of the apartment will be compared to this protocol. If something wasn't noted there, they might demand compensation, claiming that the damage occurred while you were living there. It's best to also take additional photos or, to protect yourself in the future. If you happen to overlook something during the initial inspection, Usually you still have at least 2 weeks, often even 10 days, to report any issues, because of course it's quite challenging to inspect everything thoroughly right away. You might notice things during your time living in the apartment that you didn't notice initially. After the protocol is drawn up, they hand you the keys and you can start moving in and settling down. Typically in each building you need to make your own nameplate for the mailbox and doorbell. Sometimes you even need 2 nameplates, one for your apartment door and one for the building entrance. You'll have to pay for this nameplate separately. They are not included in the rental cost. Also, depending on the apartment, different filters need to be changed at specific intervals. For example, for ventilation systems. This is also specified in the contract. How often it needs to be done, who pays for it, and so on. Well, I hope this information was helpful to you. I've tried to provide a detailed explanation of the apartment rental process in Switzerland. Please give the video a thumb up if you found it helpful. Leave any questions you have or suggestions for the future videos on my channel. And we'll see each other again very soon. Bye bye!